The weight of trust. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It wasn't when Sarah first made her unusual request, nor when I reluctantly agreed to it. It was 3 months later, on a rainy Tuesday evening, when I found a hidden folder on her laptop. "James, I need you to sit down for a minute," Sarah had said that fateful day 6 months ago, her voice carrying an unusual gravity I rarely heard. "There's something important I need to ask you." The wind howled outside our suburban home. Autumn leaves scraping against the windows like nature's warning I was too oblivious to heed. I settled onto our couch, the one we'd picked out together during happier times, and waited for whatever was coming. "It's about Megan," she said, referring to her childhood best friend who'd moved to our city just a year ago. "She needs our help, our specific help." I had no idea what was coming, no way to prepare for how those next few minutes would unravel the fabric of our 12-year marriage. Before I explain what was in that folder, I should back up. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 12 years. We'd built what I considered a good life together. Comfortable home, stable careers, and the kind of comfortable companionship that comes with over a decade of marriage. We'd faced our share of challenges, including the devastating news 4 years ago that Sarah couldn't have children due to complications from endometriosis. It had been particularly hard on her, especially as our friends started having families of their own. When Megan moved to our city last year, I was initially glad. Sarah had been somewhat withdrawn since her diagnosis, and having her oldest friend nearby seemed to breathe new life into her. They picked up right where they'd left off in college, and soon Megan was a regular fixture in our home. Megan was different from Sarah in almost every way. Where my wife was methodical and reserved, Megan was spontaneous and expressive. Sarah planned everything weeks in advance. Megan couldn't tell you what she was doing tomorrow, but they balanced each other perfectly, and I enjoyed having her energy around the house. I should have noticed the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room, the meaningful glances they exchanged when certain topics came up. But I didn't. I was too caught up in my own world, my demanding job as an architectural engineer, keeping me distracted and often working late. "Megan wants to have a baby," Sarah said that night on the couch, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "She's 37 and running out of time." "That's great," I said, not understanding why this required a sit-down conversation. "Is she seeing someone I don't know about?" Sarah shook her head. "No. She's tried dating apps, but she doesn't want to rush into a relationship just to have a child. And she's looked into sperm donors, but the process is expensive and impersonal." I nodded, still not seeing where this was going. "That's tough. I'm sure she'll figure something out." "She has." Sarah took a deep breath. "She wants you to be the father." The statement hung in the air between us, surreal and incomprehensible. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed, certain I had misheard. "She wants you to help her conceive a child," Sarah said, her voice steady now. "Naturally." I laughed, the kind of uncomfortable laugh that emerges when something is so absurd you don't know how else to respond. "You can't be serious." "I am." Her eyes held mine, unwavering. "I've thought about this for weeks, James. It makes sense." "How? How does asking me to sleep with your best friend make any sense?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Because she needs someone trustworthy, someone kind, someone who won't complicate things legally or emotionally." Sarah reached for my hand. "Because I can't give you children, but at least this way, you could experience fatherhood in some capacity." I pulled my hand away, standing up to pace the living room. "So this is about you feeling guilty? About not being able to have kids?" "No," she said, but too quickly. "This is about helping someone we care about. By having me sleep with her, Do you hear yourself? I ran my hands through my hair, trying to process what was happening. What about adoption? IVF with a donor. She's looked into all that. The waiting lists for adoption are years long. IVF is expensive with no guarantees. She's running out of time, James. And that's my problem. How, exactly? I asked, anger beginning to replace shock. Sarah stood up too, facing me. Because we're in a position to help. Because I trust you. Because I trust her. This is insane, I said. Completely insane. James, Sarah's voice softened. I wouldn't ask if there was another way. Megan's been there for me through everything. My parents' divorce, my diagnosis, everything. She's family. Family doesn't ask family to do this, I countered. Would you at least think about it? She pleaded. For me? For her. I stared at my wife, this woman I thought I knew inside and out, suddenly a stranger making the most irrational request imaginable. I need some air, I said, grabbing my keys and jacket. I drove around for hours that night, mind racing, occasionally pulling over when the thoughts became too overwhelming. Was my marriage in such a different place than I'd thought? Was this some kind of test? Or worse, was Sarah trying to find a way to end things by suggesting something she knew would be unacceptable? When I finally returned home after midnight, Sarah was asleep or pretending to be. I took the guest room, staring at the ceiling until dawn broke, no closer to understanding what had just happened. Underscore. For the next week, Sarah and I engaged in a strange dance of avoidance. We spoke about practical matters, bills, schedules, household tasks, but the elephant in the room remained untouched. I kept waiting for her to say she'd been joking or that she'd reconsidered the absurdity of her request. She didn't. Instead, 10 days after her initial bombshell, she asked if I would at least meet with Megan to discuss the situation. No pressure, she said. Just hear her out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe Megan herself would acknowledge how inappropriate this was. Maybe she'd tell Sarah it had been a passing thought, not a serious plan. We met at a quiet cafe across town. Sarah had deliberately chosen not to join us, saying we needed to talk openly without her presence influencing things. Megan was already there when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her. Thanks for coming, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. I know this is unconventional. That's one word for it, I replied, not bothering to hide my discomfort. She took a deep breath. I should explain why I'm asking this of you, and why Sarah supports it. Over the next hour, Megan shared things I never knew. How she'd been engaged at 32 to a man who left when she told him she wanted children. How she'd frozen her eggs at 34, spending her entire savings, only to have a lab accident destroy the samples. How she'd been diagnosed with a condition that was progressively reducing her fertility. My doctor says I have maybe a year left where natural conception is possible, she explained, eyes welling with tears. After that, my chances are almost zero. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. But there are other options. Other men. I've tried, James. Do you know how hard it is to date in your late 30s when you're upfront about wanting a child immediately? The few men who don't run screaming see me as desperate. An incubator, not a person. She wiped at her eyes. And anonymous donors, the thought of never knowing half my child's medical history, their heritage, I can't do it. Why me? I asked the question that had been tormenting me for days. Because I know you. I trust you. You're kind and smart and decent. She paused. And because Sarah suggested it. That stopped me cold. Sarah suggested it, not you. Megan looked surprised. She didn't tell you that part? Yes, it was her idea initially. We were talking about my situation, and she said that if she couldn't have children, she'd at least want you to have the experience of fatherhood. That it would be a way for the three of us to create something positive out of our situations. I felt dizzy, pieces shifting into new configurations. This wasn't just Megan asking a favor. This was Sarah, my wife, trying to resolve her own complicated feelings about our childlessness through this bizarre arrangement. What exactly would this involve? I asked, not sure why I was even entertaining the conversation. We'd try for 3 months, Megan said, clearly having thought this through. Natural conception, no romance, just functional. If it works, I'd be the mother in every sense, legal, practical, emotional. You could be as involved or uninvolved as you and Sarah are comfortable with. And if I say no, Megan nodded, as if she'd expected the question. Then I'll respect that completely. Our friendship won't change. Sarah and I have already discussed it. I left that meeting more confused than ever. Megan's desperation seemed genuine, and I felt compassion for her situation. But the thought of agreeing to such an arrangement felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing how far the drop was. Understood. That night, Sarah and I finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding. Megan told me it was your idea. I said as soon as we were alone. Sarah had the decency to look sheepish. I was going to tell you. I wasn't sure how to explain it. Try, I said, my tone harder than intended. She sank onto the edge of our bed. When I found out I couldn't have children, part of me died, James. You know that. And I've watched you with our nieces and nephews, seen what a natural father you are. It kills me that I took that from you. You didn't take anything, I insisted. We're a team. Your medical condition isn't your fault. But you would have been a father by now if you'd married someone else, she said, voicing a fear I didn't know she carried. Don't tell me you never think about that. The truth was I had thought about it. Not in a blaming way, but in quiet moments watching friends with their children, there had been twinges of what might have been. When Megan told me about her situation, Sarah continued, it felt like, I don't know, like the universe offering a strange kind of solution. Someone I love and trust could have the baby she desperately wants. You could have a biological child, and I could be part of it all, supporting both of you. And the fact that it requires me to have sex with someone who isn't my wife, that didn't strike you as problematic? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. Of course it did, Sarah said. I've been twisted up about this for weeks. But I keep coming back to the same conclusion, that the physical act itself isn't what matters. It's the intention, the outcome. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this perspective with the woman I'd married. And you wouldn't be jealous? Hurt, wondering what it was like. I'm not saying it would be easy, she admitted, but I've thought about it from every angle. This would be clinical, purposeful, not an affair, not a betrayal. It would feel like a betrayal to me, I said quietly. Even with my blessing? Even knowing it's what I want too. I had no answer for that. The conversation continued late into the night. Sarah revealed that she'd been in therapy specifically to work through her feelings about this proposal. That she'd set firm boundaries. Megan would move away for the duration of the attempts, coming to our house only for the purpose of conception. Sarah would not be present, but would know exactly when it was happening. Megan had agreed to cut contact during the pregnancy if that would make things easier. She's even willing to move to another city to raise the child if having them nearby would be too painful for either of us, Sarah said. The level of planning stunned me. While I'd been in shock, they had been methodically addressing every concern, every complication. I need time, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make tonight. Sarah nodded. Take all the time you need. But Megan's timeline is real. Her doctor says by next summer, her chances will drop dramatically. I slept in the guest room again that night. My world tilted on its axis. Underscore. Over the next 3 weeks, I found myself in a moral labyrinth I never expected to navigate. I consulted a therapist of my own, who mostly listened without judgment, but reminded me that any decision had to be one I could live with long term. I researched platonic co-parenting arrangements, legal implications, psychological studies on similar situations. I even spoke with a family lawyer, hypothetically, about what rights and responsibilities I might have if such an arrangement led to a child. The strangest part was watching Sarah during this time. Rather than being anxious or pressuring me, she seemed almost peaceful, as if proposing this solution had relieved some burden she'd been carrying, regardless of my decision. One evening, when we were actually having a normal dinner together, the first in weeks, I asked her directly, "Are you sure this isn't just a way for you to test me? To see if I'd choose you over some theoretical child?" She looked genuinely surprised. "God, no. If anything, I'm offering you a choice I never thought I'd have to make." "What do you mean?" She set down her fork. "When we got married, we both wanted children. That was taken from us, from me physically, but from both of us emotionally. Every day, I worry that you'll wake up and realize what you've given up by staying with me." "I've never thought of it that way," I said truthfully. "This way," she continued, "you could have a connection to a child without us having to separate. I know it's messy and complicated and unconventional, but so is life." I studied my wife's face, searching for signs of manipulation or ulterior motives. I found none. Just a woman trying to manufacture a solution to an impossible situation, motivated by equal parts guilt, love, and pragmatism. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept in our bed. We didn't touch, but the proximity felt like a tentative step back toward each other. I'd like to say my decision came after careful deliberation, weighing all sides equally. The truth is messy. What tipped the scales was finding Sarah crying one afternoon, looking through old photos of us with our friends' children. Not manipulative tears meant for me to see. She thought I was still at work. Just quiet, private grief that she lived with daily. "I'll do it," I told her that evening. "For Megan. For you. But we need rules. Clear boundaries." The relief and gratitude on her face was immediately overshadowed by concern. "Only if you're completely sure. This has to be your choice too, not just something you're doing for me." "I'm not sure anyone could be completely sure about something like this," I said honestly. "But I've thought about it from every angle, and I think I can do this in the right spirit." We spent the next week establishing parameters that everyone could live with. Megan would come to our house only on the days when she was most fertile. I would text Sarah immediately before and after. There would be no kissing, no intimate conversation. This was functional only. After 3 attempts, we would reassess whether to continue. Megan agreed to all terms without hesitation. She also signed a legal document waiving any future claim to child support from me, though I insisted on adding a clause that I could provide financial assistance voluntarily if I chose to. The whole situation still felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. But I made my decision. underscore 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 underscore. I won't describe the actual encounters. They were exactly as clinical and awkward as you might imagine. Megan would arrive at the predetermined time. Sarah would leave the house for exactly 1 hour, and we would proceed with mechanical efficiency. Afterward, Megan would leave immediately, and Sarah would return, the three of us maintaining the polite fiction that we were engaged in some kind of medical procedure rather than the most primal human act. After the second attempt, I found Sarah sitting in our darkened bedroom, staring out the window. "Are you okay?" I asked, hesitating at the threshold. "I don't know," she answered honestly. I thought I'd processed all my feelings about this, but I sat beside her, careful to leave space between us. "We can stop. Right now. Just say the word." She shook her head. "It's not that I want to stop. It's that I'm feeling things I didn't expect." She turned to me, her expression troubled. "I'm not jealous in the way I thought I might be. I'm jealous that she might get to experience something I never will, carrying your child." It was the most vulnerable she'd been since this began. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it. "Whatever happens," I said, "you're my wife. My partner. That doesn't change." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "I know, and that's why I still think this is right, as strange as it is. Because I trust you completely. That trust would be our undoing." Understood. After 3 attempts over 2 months, Megan's pregnancy test came back positive. The news arrived via text message to both Sarah and me. A single image of the test with 2 pink lines. Sarah cried with joy, hugging me tightly. I felt them. The theoretical had suddenly become real. Somewhere across town, a new life was beginning. One with my genetic material, but in which my role remained undefined. The coming weeks brought an unexpected shift. Rather than pulling back as we planned, Megan became more present in our lives. What had been weekly dinners before the arrangement became almost daily check-ins. She wanted Sarah at her first doctor's appointment. She brought over ultrasound pictures. She asked our opinions on names. Sarah, to my surprise, encouraged this closeness. She went with Megan to buy maternity clothes. She downloaded pregnancy apps to track the baby's development. She started clearing out our home office to create what she called a visiting nursery for when the baby would stay with us. I thought we agreed Megan would give us space during the pregnancy. I said one night after Megan had left following dinner. "That was before," Sarah said, collecting dishes. "Things feel different now that it's actually happening." "Different how?" She paused, seeming to search for the right words. "It feels like we're all part of this together. Like the baby is a little bit ours too." Warning bells rang in my head. "Sarah, we were very clear about the boundaries. This is Megan's baby, not ours." "I know that," she said quickly. "Legally, practically, but emotionally, you're the biological father. I'm your wife and her best friend. We're going to be in this child's life one way or another." "That's not what we agreed to," I insisted. "Plans change," she said lightly. "Besides, isn't it better this way? All of us supporting each other." I wasn't sure it was better. The boundaries that had made this arrangement tolerable were blurring, and with them, my certainty about what exactly I'd agreed to. Underscore. underscore, 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 underscore. By the time Megan was 4 months pregnant, a routine had established itself. She spent at least 3 evenings a week at our house. She and Sarah texted constantly. They attended prenatal classes together. I was included in discussions about the baby's future, but increasingly felt like an accessory to their enthusiasm rather than an equal participant. Then came that rainy Tuesday evening when everything changed. Sarah was out picking up takeout for dinner. Megan was expected in an hour. I was working on my laptop in the living room when I realized I needed a file from Sarah's computer for a joint household budget we maintained. Her laptop was on the kitchen counter, unlocked. I opened her documents folder, searching for the budget spreadsheet, when I noticed a folder I hadn't seen before, simply titled Plan. I shouldn't have opened it. In 12 years of marriage, we'd respected each other's digital privacy. But something about the single-word title, combined with the strain of the past months, overrode my usual restraint. Inside were dozens of documents dating back over a year. Journal entries, research on conception, legal notes, and most damning of all, a series of text message screenshots between Sarah and Megan. Sarah, 14 months ago, I can't stop thinking about what you said. About wanting Jay to be the donor. Megan, I was just thinking out loud. It would never work. Sarah, but what if it could? What if I suggested it? He trusts me completely. More messages followed, outlining a strategy. How Sarah would introduce the idea gradually. How Megan should appear reluctant at first. How they would present it as helping a friend rather than the actual plan. Creating a baby that Sarah could co-parent without the physical ability to bear a child herself. Megan, 11 months ago, but what if he says no? Sarah, he won't. He feels too guilty about my condition. This gives him a way to be a father without betraying me. The perfect solution. Megan, and you're really okay sharing him? Even just physically? Sarah, it's not sharing if I'm orchestrating it. Besides, it's just biology. The three of us will raise this baby together, just like we planned. Just like we planned. The words burned into my consciousness. This hadn't been a reluctant request born of Megan's desperation. It had been a calculated scheme, engineered months before it was ever presented to me. There was more. Discussions of how they would gradually increase Megan's presence in our home. Debates about whether to eventually tell me the truth after the baby was born. Even considerations of whether they should try for a second child using the same method before I could change my mind. I felt physically ill, closing the laptop just as I heard Sarah's key in the front door. Dinner, she called cheerfully, unaware that her world was about to implode. She found me sitting motionless in the kitchen, my face telling her everything before I spoke. James? What's wrong? She asked, setting down the bags of food. I found a folder, I said simply. The plan. The color drained from her face. Not confusion or denial, immediate recognition. She knew exactly what I'd discovered. I can explain, she began, the same phrase used by cheaters and liars throughout history. You manipulated me, I said, my voice eerily calm. Both of you, for over a year. It wasn't like that, she insisted. Yes, we discussed it beforehand, but everything I told you about my feelings was true. You manufactured this entire situation. My calm evaporated. You made me believe I was helping a friend, when really I was fulfilling your twisted plan to have a baby by proxy. Is that so wrong? She shot back, abandoning pretense. To want a family so badly I'd go to these lengths? To include you in parenthood the only way I could. The wrong part was lying to me, manipulating me, making me think this was my decision when you'd already decided for all of us months ago. Sarah sank into a chair. We knew you'd never agree if we presented it honestly. You're right about that, I said bitterly. I would never have agreed to be a pawn in whatever this is. It's a family, she said quietly. It's what we always wanted. No, a family isn't built on lies. It's not created through manipulation and deceit. The doorbell rang. Megan, right on schedule. Sarah and I stared at each other. Don't answer it, I said. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. She can see our cars. She knows we're home. I walked to the door, Sarah trailing behind me. When I opened it, Megan stood on our porch, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. Her smile faltered as she registered our expressions. "What's wrong?" she asked, looking from me to Sarah. "He found a folder," Sarah said, her voice hollow. Understanding and dread washed over Megan's face. "James, don't." I held up a hand. "I don't want to hear more lies." Megan stepped inside anyway, closing the door behind her. It started as Sarah's idea, yes. But everything I told you about my condition, my desire for a child, that was all true. The truth wrapped in a lie is still a lie, I said, suddenly exhausted. The two of you plotted this for months. You manipulated me into believing I was making a choice when there was no choice at all. There was always a choice, Sarah insisted. We just helped you make the right one. The right one for whom? I demanded. For you? For your plan to create a baby you could co-opt as your own? Sarah flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair, I shouted, my control finally breaking. I was honest with both of you. I struggled with this decision. I worried about the consequences for all of us. And all the while, you'd already mapped everything out, step by step, message by message. Megan sat heavily on our couch, tears streaming down her face. What are you going to do? It was the first honest question either of them had asked me in months. I don't know, I answered truthfully, but I can't stay here tonight. James, please, Sarah reached for me. We can work through this. I pulled away. Can we? You've broken something fundamental between us, Sarah. Trust doesn't recover easily from this kind of damage. The baby, Megan began, is yours. I finished for her, as we agreed. But don't expect me to play the role you've scripted for me in this production. I'll fulfill any legal obligations, but beyond that, I shook my head. I need time away from both of you. I packed a bag while they sat in strained silence in our living room. As I headed for the door, Sarah made one last plea. I did it because I love you, she said, because I couldn't bear the thought of not having a family with you. I paused, hand on the doorknob. If you loved me, you would have respected me enough to tell me the truth. Underscore. I checked into a hotel that night, my mind a hurricane of betrayal, anger, and confusion. The pregnancy was real. Megan was carrying my biological child. But everything surrounding it, every conversation, every agreement, had been built on a foundation of deception. Over the coming days, both women tried repeatedly to contact me. I responded only to confirm I was safe but needed space. I took a leave of absence from work and rented a short-term apartment across town. 3 weeks into my self-imposed exile, I agreed to meet Sarah at a neutral location, a park where we used to walk on Sunday mornings early in our marriage. She looked smaller somehow, her confidence deflated. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as we walked along the familiar path. "I've had a lot of time to think," I replied. And I stopped, turning to face her. "I understand why you did it. That doesn't mean I can forgive it easily." She nodded, accepting this. I've been seeing my therapist twice a week, trying to understand myself, why I thought this was acceptable. And what have you learned? That I was so consumed by what I couldn't have that I lost sight of what I did have, a husband who loved me, who would have done anything I asked, honestly. Her voice caught. I didn't need to manipulate you. I should have trusted you with the truth. It was the most genuine she'd sounded in months. "Where do we go from here?" she asked after a long silence. "I don't know if our marriage can recover from this," I admitted, "but I'm willing to try couples counseling to see if we can rebuild something that isn't tainted by all this." Hope flickered in her eyes. "And the baby?" The question I've been wrestling with most. I won't abandon my biological child, but I need clear boundaries. Real ones this time, not the illusion of boundaries while you orchestrate something else behind my back. "That's fair," she said quietly. "And Megan needs to understand that while I'll fulfill my obligations, I'm not stepping into the co-parenting fantasy you two concocted." Sarah nodded again, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, James. For all of it. I wanted to comfort her, but the trust between us was too fragile. Instead, I simply said, 'Me too.' Underscore 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 underscore. That was 2 months ago. Megan is now in her 7th month. The baby, a girl, growing healthy and strong according to all tests. Sarah and I are in intensive couples therapy, learning how to communicate honestly after such a profound breach. I've moved back home, though we sleep in separate rooms. Megan and I have established a cordial but distant relationship. She's agreed to my terms. I'll be present in my daughter's life as a father figure, but not as part of the pseudo-family unit she and Sarah had envisioned. Sarah has reluctantly accepted these terms as well, though I sometimes catch her looking at nursery websites or baby clothes, the hope for more not entirely extinguished. I don't know what the future holds for us. Some days, the weight of betrayal feels insurmountable. Other days, glimpses of the marriage we once had shine through, suggesting the possibility of rebuilding. What I do know is that trust, once broken, is like a shattered mirror. You can piece it back together, but the cracks remain visible. Whether those cracks eventually strengthen the bond or ultimately prove its undoing remains to be seen. The baby will arrive in spring. A new life entering a complicated world of adult mistakes and consequences. I hope that despite how she was conceived, through deception wrapped in half-truths, we can all find a way to give her what she deserves. Honesty, stability, and love unburdened by the weight of our past choices. Perhaps, in her innocence, she'll teach us what we failed to give each other.